going to return to a theme that we've discussed before. This week's parsha is Parshat Yisrael, in which we recount Matan Torah. So I thought that this would be appropriate. The Chassam Sofer in the last week's parsha points out an explanation of a pasuk in Tehillim, Vayamru kol al yam b'yam suf, that the Bnei Yisrael had some kind of a rebellion at Yam Suf, at the splitting of the Red Sea, makes the following comment. If you look carefully at the psukim in last week's parsha, you'll notice, as the Ramban notices, the Ramban learns differently than Rashi and the Chizkuni. Normally, when the Bnei Yisrael traveled by day, there was a pillar of cloud that went in front of them, and at night, a pillar of fire. By the Yam Suf, something else happened. According to the way the Ramban understands it, both the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire, which everybody agrees were simultaneously there at Yam Suf, even though it was at night, and the pillar of cloud should have disappeared, but the Ramban understands that both the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire moved behind the Bnei Yisrael, with the pillar of cloud separating the Egyptian army from the Jewish people, and the pillar of fire directly behind the Bnei Yisrael. In other words, you had the Yam Suf, you had the Bnei Yisrael, you had the pillar of fire, and then in between the pillar of fire and the Egyptian camp was the pillar of cloud separating the Egyptians so that they couldn't see what was happening, and also, as Rashi points out, to be like a bulletproof shield to protect them when they threw the Bnei Yisrael when the arrows came. The Chassam Sofer points out that based on this, the Bnei Yisrael had a tremendous problem, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu had already given them the commandment that if they ever want to know what direction to travel, they should travel in the direction that the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud lead them. But if that's true, then they should have turned around and gone towards the Egyptians, not towards the Yam Suf. That's what the Ramban says, because the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire moved behind them, so they should have immediately turned around. The problem was that Moshe told them, go towards the Yam, go towards the Red Sea. So the Chassam Sofer explains this pasuk, Vayadru al Yam b'Yam Suf, that Bnei Yisrael were nevuchim, they didn't know what to do. On the one hand, they had to listen to Hashem. On the other hand, Moshe is Moshe. So, truth is that really they should have chosen to listen to Hashem. But that's not what they did. They disregarded Hashem's commandment and chose Moshe. Says the Chassam Sofer, they did the right thing. Because the klal is that Loi Bashamayim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have any authority over our decision-making when it comes to Torah, even though that's counterintuitive. And aside from the fact that this took place before Matan Torah, nonetheless, the Chassam Sofer says this. The Gemara points out in several places, notably two places in Bava Metzia, one which is too long to go into right now, on Daf Nun Tes, famous Gemara with a dispute between Rabbi Elazar and the Chachamim, that Moi Bashamayim, the basic 30-second version is that there was a dispute between the sages and Rabbi Elazar as to whether or not a certain type of an oven was ritually pure or not pure, Torah or Tameh. Rabbi Elazar used all these miracles to prove he was right, and finally a baskol, a heavenly voice, came out and said, not only is Rabbi Elazar right today, by the way, he's right all the time, you're all wrong. Omad Rabbi Yeshua Radlo, this is how the Gemara concludes. Omad Rabbi Yeshua Radlo, Rabbi Yeshua stood up and said, Rebbeinu Shalom, butt out. It's not your business. Only by Shamayim. Shekarni the Torah. You already gave us a Torah, and the Torah says, Achari Rabbi Mahates. That's one Gemara. But the more incredible Gemara is on Daf Pei Vav, in the same Masechta. There the Gemara says that the Rebbeinu Shalom and the Beis Din Shalmalo, the Yeshiva Shalmalo, were arguing with the Chachamim on earth about whether a certain type of spot on a human being, which I won't go into now, makes him tahar or tameh. And the Rebbeinu Shalom said tahar, he's pure, and the Yeshiva Shalmato, the Yeshiva on earth, said tameh. Finally, decided they're going to have, you know who's going to be the The one to decide, Rabbi Bar Nachmani, he's an expert in this area. And the Gemara points out, long story, that on his deathbed, he agreed with Hashem. Sounds chutzpah there. He agreed with Hashem, and then he said Torah. If you look it up in the Rambam, in Hilchas Torah, the Rambam Paskins is not like Hashem, but like the Chachamim. He says it's Tameh. So the obvious question is, come on guys, if it's Hashem, and a human Gadol, as great as the human Gadol is, the great rabbi, how can that be? So the Kesef Mishnah, Rav Yosef Karo explained that Rabbi Bar Nachmani agreed, and especially the Gemara says we're going to listen to whatever Rabbi Nachmani said, but he said it on his deathbed, when his neshama was leaving his body. That's what the Beis Yosef writes in the Kesef Mishnah, and therefore it's in the status of Lei Bashamayim. Some Sofer points out that this is one of the most difficult areas for us to comprehend, but it's so that in a challenge between Hashem and ourselves, we prevail. Because that's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to be. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, had he wanted, he could have given us a Chumash, and he could have given us another book called a Shulchan Aruch, and all the laws would have been spelled out. But that's not the way he did it. He left it to us, to the Chachmei Gemara, to the Rishonim, Machronim, all the way down to our days, to figure out using the methods. You have to use the methods that he gave us, what we call the Yud Gimel Midas and Midrash Hashem, I think in English the hermeneutical principles. We have to use the rule book, but we're the ones who make the decision. This is an awesome task that our Chachamim have. So the Bnei Yisrael were perplexed. Should we follow what Hashem told us, follow the direction of the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud, or should we do what Moshe said? And the Sofer says they followed Moshe, and they did exactly the right thing. This is something that the non-Orthodox movements don't understand. That's what makes us different. And not only do we follow what it says in the Chumash, but we follow what our greats in every generation tell us to do. And this is a very, very fundamental principle of the Yadus of Judaism.